Hi, my name is Rose Berger. I'm an editor at Sojourners.
And I'm Jeannie Choi, and today in this how-to video, Rose, our resident Catholic, will be teaching me, the resident low church evangelical, how to make a memorial prayer altar. So Rose, why don't you first share with me what this is and why this is an important prayer practice?
Well, I think most churches have the concept of an altar. I think maybe Catholics and Protestants or evangelicals even split a little bit on like how important the altar is and that sort of thing. But in my family, we always tried to have a little place where we would put pictures and pictures to just remember people, especially people who had died. Not as a way, not as some sort of ancestor worship or whatever, but just as a way of remembering those people and as a way of communing with God at that place through people who have been important and significant to us. So this, we've got a few pictures and candle and flowers, and so this is a little very simple memorial prayer altar.
Okay, so we're actually currently in the Sojourners prayer room. We have noon prayer every day, every work day here from 12 to 12:15, so this felt like a fitting place to do this. So why don't you share with me first the basic steps of how to create a memorial altar? What are the basic steps here?
Well, the first thing you do is just gather up some items that you think you want to have on your prayer altar. So in this case, I have a picture of my grandparents here, and these are my mom's parents, and my dad's mom is here, and my friend Jeannie, who died a few years ago, is here. And I also have a little icon that was given to me as a gift that just sort of helps me remember the whole family of Christ. So that's the Madonna and Child, and then there's a Christ picture, and it sort of is part of the family portrait. And then I also just brought some fresh flowers out of the yard to sort of make it beautiful, because you want the altar to be something that as you offer it to God, it's something that's pleasing to God. So tell me about some of the things that you put on.
Yeah, sure. This is a photo of my grandparents in front of the Capitol, and my father passed away when I was a freshman in college, but my grandmother is still very much alive. And then this is my family, all still alive as well. But of course, they live in California and I live here, so this is a great way for me to keep them in prayer and keep them in the forefront of my mind. This jar is a number of artifacts that I picked up while working on a Navajo reservation this past July. So I try to remember all the folks that I met there with this jar. And then these are my youth kids. I used to be a youth pastor, so I'll put them on the prayer altar. And then this is a shirt that belonged to my grandma, who passed away a couple months ago, so it's a good tactile way to remember her as well.
Right. So partly what we're doing then is in the Bible, I think the first altar built in the Bible is in Genesis. It's built by Abraham, and Abraham seems to pass that tradition down to his children and their children's children, and on it goes. And the altar in the Bible is a meeting place of God to commemorate some important event. It's also a place of sacrifice, and so you get different kinds of ways of understanding the altar in Christian tradition. But for our purposes, this altar is a place where we remember important people who helped us know God better, and whether they're living or dead, and sometimes important places or important experiences. And it's not just personal either. Sometimes it's social. And so this cross is one that I bought in Colombia when I was there, and so I put it on and I remember the people of Colombia, where there's a lot of violence and fighting going on. And this little thing, this is a little egg, but it's made by the people who are the survivors of the Chernobyl disaster.
Oh, wow.
And so that's the kind of thing that I look at it, and it helps me remember to pray for people of industrial accidents, people who are now climate refugees, and And so there can be things like that that are physical objects that just are a touchstone for helping you remember a certain situation or conflict or experience, either that you've had personally or is one that you are touched by in the world. And if you do this at home, you might want to think about whether this is sort of a personal altar that you want to put in your room or someplace that's a little bit more private, where you will just have it as an instrument to help you in your daily prayer practice. Or it might be a little bit more of a home altar, public altar, where you put it in the living room or someplace where your guests can see it. And in my family, one thing that my parents do is in sort of Catholic and I think Anglican tradition, November is typically the month where people remember the dead. It begins with All Souls and All Saints at the beginning of November. And so they would often invite a circle of friends over, particularly those who had somebody who died during the previous year.
Right.
And they would ask them to come and to bring a picture of that person, a story about that person. And my parents would fix a meal. And during the mealtime, they would set the table with pictures and photos and other remembrances from people who had died during the year. And then they'd tell stories about that person and just call them to mind. And then they might close out the evening with sort of a litany to the cloud of witnesses. So a prayer that calls out the names of those who have died in the past year, and also those who have died, longer than that, or just calling out loud the names of people who we want to pray for, situations that we want to remember, naming all those ways that we encounter God. And then this is just sort of an incarnational way of remembering people. And, in some ways it's that beginning of John's Gospel where the Word becomes flesh. The Word becomes Word in our study of Scripture, but the Word becomes flesh in the people around us, and this is one way of just remembering that community.
Great. Well, let me just go over then the basic steps of creating this prayer altar. Gather items of remembrance for you, whether they're photos or artifacts like we have here. Keep in mind family, both deceased or still alive, and friends. And also social causes like Rose has, artifacts that help you remember what people around the world are going through. Make it pretty, beautiful. Flowers and candles also help kind of invoke a sense of prayer. And then maybe you gather family or friends together for a meal where they can also bring their artifacts, or maybe it's a standing prayer altar in your private place at home. But no matter what, I think this is a really fantastic way to remember those past and present who impact your lives and who need to be remembered.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Rose.
You're welcome. I
great.
think this is beautiful.